Okay, so good day class. So our topic right now is about the limits. So limits will be our module 2 in Calculus 1. So hopefully meron na kayong idea sa previous na topic natin which is yung uh, functions. So na-discuss previously, na-discuss natin yung about functions. We defined it, function notation, and finding roots of a function. So, dito sa module 2, which is yung limits, meron tayong topic outline wherein andito yung definition of a limit and then theorems on limits. So, sa theorems ng limits, we have 8 theorems in limits. Okay? So, later on, mali-discuss natin yan isa-isa. Then, next, we have here the learning objectives of our current module. So, andyan, after studying this module, you as future engineer should be able to determine notation of the limit. We will also take a conceptual look at limits and try to get a grasp on just what they are and what they can tell us, and so on. Then next, understand several types of limits. So, yun na yung mga binabanggit ko kaninang 8 theorems. Next, we have the overview. So, it's stated here that in this module, we introduce the concept of limits. We will discuss the interpretation, meaning of a limit, and how to evaluate limits. So, the definition of and evaluation of one-sided limits and the intermediate value theorem. Okay. So, in this module or topic, we also have a pre-assessment. So, ito yung pre-assessment, dapat marunong na kayo nito at masagutan na ninyo ito bago tayo mag-proceed sa next, dito sa topic natin. So, ito, ay upload ko na ito as your assignment. And then later on, sasagutan ninyo itong pre-assessment. So, definition of a limit. So, we'll start with this. So, let f of x be the function of x. And let a be constant. So, if there is number L such that in order to make the value of f of x as close to L may be desired, it is sufficient to choose x close enough to A, but different from A. Then we say that the limit of f of x as x approaches A is L. So, ganito natin siya isusulat in mathematical notation, yung limit. So, limit of x as approaches to A, f of x, is equivalent to L. So, ganun siya basahin. Next, which is read the limit of f of x as x approaches to A is L. So, ganun siya basahin itong mathematical notation ng limit natin. Next. So, first, theorems on a limit. Theorems on a limit. Okay. So, we have the theorem 1. Ano yung nakalagay dyan sa theorem 1? Andyan yung the limit of A is constant itself. If K is any constant, then limit of K as x approaches A is equivalent to K. Yan yung theorem 1 natin. So, for example, andyan. Sulat natin. Okay. Limits. Limit theorems. So, we have here, number 1, theorem. Theorem 1. So, nakalagay dyan kanina na ang theorem 1 natin is the limit of K as x approaches to A is equivalent to K. So, ibig sabihin yan, yung K natin is constant. So, example, Example, so we have the, what? The limit of, letter A, limit of x A 2 is equivalent to 2. Ayan. So, ano mapapansin nyo dyan? So, yung 2 natin dito, yun yung k natin sa formula ng theorem 1. Ayan. So, ito, limit of 2 as x approaches A is equivalent to 2. So, the same. Still, number 2 siya. Kasi, constant yung 2. Constant yan. Next, letter B example. So, let's say we have the limit of 3.14 as x approaches to A. So, ano magiging sagot natin dyan? Ano magiging sagot natin dyan sa limit na yan? Of course, nasa constant pa rin tayo. So, magiging sagot dyan is 3.14. Ayan, yan na yung sagot. Kumaga, parang kinuha lang natin yung 3.14, yun na yung magiging sagot natin. Since constant lang siya. Another example. Still, nasa theorem 1 pa rin tayo. Theorem 1. So, letter C example. So, let's say we have the limit of 789 as x approaches A. So, ano magiging sagot natin dyan? So, kukunin lang natin yung constant natin dyan. 789. Ayan. So, yan na yung magiging final answer natin using the Theorem 1 formula. Okay? Next, we have the next, which is yung Theorem 2. Okay. So, it states here that the Theorem 2 is the limit of x as x approaches A is equivalent to or equal to A. This may be taught as the substitution law because x is simply substituted by A. So, ito na yung formula natin. Andyan yung formula natin. So, Theorem 2. Limit of x as approaches x is equivalent to A. Is equivalent to A. Ayan. Yung Theorem 2 natin. So, examples. Next frame tayo. Theorem 2. So, ano yung formula natin dyan sa Theorem 2? Limit of x as x approaches A is equivalent to A. Sabi nga sa theorem kanina, known as the substitution law. Yan yung Theorem 2 natin. Huwag niyong kalilimutan, substitution law siya. Okay. So, example. Examples. So, first example, we have the limit of x as x approaches to what? 9. Is equivalent to. So, ano magiging sagot natin dyan? So, limit of x as x approaches A is equivalent to what? So, kanina nakalagay dyan A. Ano ba yung value ng A natin dito? Value ng A natin is 9. Yan. So, A natin is equivalent to 9. So, ibig sabihin, 9 ang magiging sagot natin. Kaya naging 9 yan. Next, letter B. B example. So, the limit of x as x approaches to 0.005. So, ano magiging sagot natin dyan? Of course, 0.005. Kasi ang A natin dyan, A natin is equivalent to 0.005. Kaya naging yan ang final answer natin. So, ano napapansin nyo dyan? So, kung magbabase tayo dito sa formula na ito, substitution law, yung andito sa value ni A, yun lang yung nilalagay natin dito na sagot. Naintindihan? So, katulad naman dito kanina, balik tayo sa previous, yung theorem 1, kung ano yung constant na nakalagay dito, yun naman yung nilalagay natin dito na as answer. Okay. Katulad nito, limit of 2 as x approaches a. So, equivalent to 2 siya. Kinuha lang natin yung constant na yun. Next. Okay, so last example tayo sa theorem 2. Theorem 2, letter C example. So, let's say we have the limit of x as x approaches to negative 10. So, of course, ang A natin dito is equivalent to negative 10. So, therefore, our answer to that limit is negative 10. So, yan yung sagot na natin. Final answer. Okay, next. We have the Theorem 3. But before that, for the remaining theorems, we will assume that the limits of f and g both exist as x approaches a, and that they are L and M respectively. So in other words, we have here the two mathematical notations of L and M. So the limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to L. And the limit of g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to m. So, wag niyong kakalimutan yung dalawang mathematical notation ng limit na yan for L and m. Kasi later on, magagamit natin yan. Next, we have the Theorem 3, or also known as the constant multiple theorem. So, this says that the limit of a multiple of a function is simply that multiple of the limit of the function. Yan. So, yan si Theorem 3. So, ano yung mathematical notation natin dyan sa Theorem 3? Ito siya. Theorem 3 or the constant multiple theorem. Ayan. Okay. So, from our two letters or variables mentioned a while ago, we have the limit of f of x is equivalent to L. X approaches a. And then we have the limit of g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to m. So, tingnan natin kung ano yung relevance niyan sa Theorem 3 natin, which is yung constant multiple theorem. So, ano yung formula natin for Theorem 3? T3. So, we have the limit of k f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to k. So, yung k natin, constant yan. K limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to K dot L. Ayan. So, palitan natin. Reminder ko lang, itong K na to ay isang constant. Then, yung f of x na ito, yan yung function natin. Oh, alam nyo na kung ano yung function. Next. So, try nating intindihin yung formula na yan sa pamamagitan ng isang example. Actually, hindi isa, kasi dadagdagan natin yan. So, examples. Letter A. We have the limit of eight f of x as x approaches a. Ano magiging sagot natin dyan? Pero of course, bago natin masasagutan yan, merong kulang. Merong kulang, di ba? Andyan yung value ng f of x. Meron ba tayong function ng f of x? So, kung mapapansin nyo dyan sa example, wala. Kasi, ang given dyan is direct value. So, we have the value of f of x is equivalent to 4. Yan. So, if the limit of f of x is equivalent to 4, yan. So, if limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to 4, then we have now to solve the problem. Ayan. So, equate lang natin to using yung formula natin sa Theorem 3. So, limit of 8 times f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to what? So, gagawin lang natin dyan, ilabas muna natin yung 8. Yun yung constant. So, 8, then next na natin yung limit. So, limit of f of x as x approaches a. Ayan. So, dyan pa lang nakikita nyo na ano yung value natin ng limit of f of x as x approaches a. Yun ay equivalent to 4. Tama? So, 8 times 4, ganyan, lagyan natin ng parenthesis, is equivalent to 32. Ayan. So, yan na yung final answer natin for example A. Next, letter B. Letter B. So, let's say we have the limit of negative 11 f of x. So, itong point na to, hindi siya decimal para siyang, yan yung indication ng multiplication natin. So, alam naman natin na ang indication ng multiplication natin can be a point, asterisk, or a parenthesis. So, indication of multiplications. So, limit of negative 11 times f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to, yan ang hahanapin natin. So, katulad nga ng sinabi natin kanina, limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to 4. So, itong condition na to is given prior to the problems. So, yan, substitute natin. So, ilabas natin si constant, which is negative 11, and then limit of f of x as x approaches a. So, ano yung value nito? Meron na tayo dyan, equivalent to 4. So, negative 11 times 4 is equivalent to negative 44. Ayan. Final answer of letter B. Next. Last example. So, C. Ayan. So, okay naman na siguro yung tatlong examples para sa inyo. Next, we have the limit of 3 over 2 multiplied to f of x as x approaches a. So, ganun ulit. So, ilabas natin si 3 over 2 as constant. Kahit na fraction yan, constant pa rin yan. Kasi, real number pa rin siya. Next, limit of f of x as x approaches a. And we have 3 over 2 multiplied to 4. So, ano yung magiging sagot? It's equivalent to, so 4 times 3 is equivalent to 12 divided by 2. So, baka magtaka kayo kung paano nangyari yan, ha? So, 4 times 3 is equivalent to 12 divided by 2. And then, i-divide na natin, magiging 6. So, yan na yung final answer natin sa letter C. Next, we have the theorem 4. Theorem number 4. Okay. Theorem number 4, or the addition theorem. This says that the limit of a sum of functions is the sum of the limits of the individual functions. Subtraction is also included in this law. That is, the limit of a difference of functions is the difference of their limits. Okay? So, kapag sum of the limit, of course, yun yung sum ng individual functions or terms. And then, dito sa Theorem 4, included na yung subtraction. So, the limit of a difference of a function is the difference of their limits. Okay? So, ano yung magiging formula natin dyan? So, andyan na. So, Theorem 4, or the addition theorem. Okay? So, formula natin, the limit of f of x plus g of x. So, as x approaches a is equivalent to the limit of f of x as x approaches a plus the limit of g of x as x approaches a. So, ito, para di tayo malito, lalagyan natin ng brace or bracket. Ayan, kung mapapansin nyo, the limit of f of x plus g of x. So, dalawang function ang meron sa atin. So, ano yung first function natin? F of x. Kung mapapansin nyo dito sa kabila, hiniwalay lang siya. So, the limit of f of x as x approaches a. Ganon din sa g of x. Plus, the limit of g of x as x approaches a. So, kapag sa subtraction, papalitan lang natin ito ng minus. Susulat ko sa kabila. So, Theorem 4 pa rin tayo. Theorem 4. The limit of f of x minus g of x as x approaches a. Lagyan natin ulit ng bracket. Is equivalent to, equal to, limit of f of x as x approaches a minus the limit of g of x as x approaches a. Ayan. So, makikita niyo na yung difference. Ito, subtraction. And then, itong isa is yung addition. But, considered as Theorem 4 silang dalawa. Okay. So, itong limit of f of x as x approaches a, pwede natin siyang i-denote as L. And then, itong limit of g of x as x approaches a, yan yung letter m natin. So, plus m. Yan. So, pwede natin i-denote na ganyan. Ganon naman sa kabila. So, L minus M. Baka magtaka kayo kung saan nanggaling yung L. Yung L natin is yung limit of f of x. And then yung M natin, yun yung limit ng g of x. Okay, proceed tayo sa examples. Examples, letter A. So we have here, if the limit of f of x is equivalent to 4 as x approaches a, so burahin muna natin yung a, kasi yung sinusulat ko pa lang is yung condition ng examples. So, yan. And the limit of g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to negative 5. Then, pwede na tayong mag-proceed sa ating example A, B, and C. So, ito, baka magtaka kayo, arrow yan ha? Hindi yan D, arrow. Nasa sulat ko na lang yan, kaya ganyan. Lagyan ko ng warning, arrow. Pati ito, arrow ito. Okay, proceed tayo sa example letter A. So, ano yung magiging example natin? The limit of f of x minus g of x. Yan, brace na lang yan para mas maintindihan. As x approaches a. Ayan, so isa-isahin ulit natin. Gagamitin natin yung formula na na-discuss natin kanina. So, the limit of f of x approaches x a plus, sulat ko na lang dito sa baba, the limit of g of x as x approaches a. Di pala plus yun. Minus. Minus siya. Minus. Ayan. So, sa kabila na tayo. Sa kabila. Equals. Ano yung limit of f of x natin? Limit of f of x as x approaches a plus limit of g of x as x approaches a. Yan. So, plus yun. Plus. Ulitin natin, plus pala dapat yan. Yan. Okay. So, ano yung value ng limit of f of x natin? Equivalent to 4. So, yung buong ito ay equivalent to 4. Plus, so, g of x natin is equivalent to negative 5. Ayan. Equals, 4 minus 5 is equivalent to negative 1. So, yan yung final answer natin sa letter A. Ayan. Kasi nga, given. Given na yung value ng limit of f of x tsaka value ng limit of g of x. Next. Example number 2 or letter B. We have the limit of f of x minus g of x. Oh, so ito naman na yung subtraction. Kanina, yung first example about addition. X approaches a. Okay, paghiwalayin ulit natin, the limit of f of x as x approaches a minus the limit of g of x as x approaches a. Ayan. So, anong value natin ng f of x? Equivalent to 4. And then, minus, value natin ng limit of g of x is equivalent to negative 5. Ulitin ko, saan ko nakuha yung values na mga yan? Given na po yan. Okay, so f plus 5 is equivalent to 9. So, yan na yung final answer natin. Okay? Next. Theorem 5. Theorem 5 na tayo. Theorem 5. So, Theorem 5 states that the multiplication theorem, this is similar to the addition theorem, with multiplication replacing addition as the operation involved. Thus, the limit of a product of a function is equivalent or equal to the product of their limits. So, kung kanina sa Theorem 4, yun yung addition-subtraction theorem, itong Theorem 5, ito yung multiplication theorem. So, yung operations natin or operators na plus and minus, papalitan lang natin ng multiplication. Okay? So, we have there the limit of f of x times g of x as x approaches a. So, pinalitan lang yung plus and minus ng multiplication. Okay. Theorem 5. The multiplication theorem. So, limit of f of x times g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to, so paghiwalayin natin, limit of f of x as x approaches a times the limit of g of x as x approaches a. Ayan. So, dalawang function, pinaghiwalay ang limits. Then, i-multiply lang natin. Lalo kapag given na yung value ng limit of f of x and given na yung limit of g of x, pag-multiplyin na lang natin sila. Next. We have here, sabi dito, let limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to 4. And limit of g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to negative 5. So, example na yan. So, gagamitin natin, sasagutan natin yan dito sa examples natin sa board. So, example. Meron tayong limit of f of x natin as x approaches a is equivalent to negative 4. Ano yung isa? Yung g of x natin, negative 5. Okay, so, limit of g of x, negative 5 as x approaches. Okay, balikan natin. 4 lang pala yun. Walang negative. So, solution. Dito na lang. Pagkasyahin ko. So, limit. So, using the formula, limit of f of x as x approaches a times the limit of g of x as x approaches a. So, parang ganito lang yan. So, 4 times negative 5 is equivalent to negative 20. So, yan lang yun. Pinag-multiply lang natin. Ang importante lang dito is maintindihan nyo yung formula and paano ba natin sila sineseparate. So, katulad nito, sineparate natin yung f of x at saka g of x. Kasi base nga dito sa formula, for given formula, nakapagsama siya. So, medyo komplikado siya tignan. Kaya ginawa ng formula natin sa Theorem 5, pinaghiwalay muna natin sila para mas maintindihan. Okay? Yun yung Theorem 5. But, may additional pa siyang statements. So, remark 1. Diyan. The addition and multiplication theorems may be applied to sums, difference, and products of more than two functions. So, yung sabi dito, emphasize ko, more than two functions. So, pwedeng maging 3 functions and 4 functions. So, sulat ko. So, dito sa examples natin, meron lang tayong dalawang functions na ginawa, which is f of x, then g of x. So, sabi kanina state sa remark 1 ng Theorem 5, pwede daw natin gamitin yon addition, subtraction, and multiplication ng Theorem 5 and 4 sa marami pang functions. So, let's say we have another function. We have FGH, h of x. O, tatlo na yan. So, kapag addition, magiging limit of f of x plus g of x plus h of x as x approaches A. A yan. Di yan 9. A. So, lagyan natin ng bracket para di natin makalimutan. Oh. So, paano natin yung paghihiwalayin? Equals limit of f of x as x approaches A plus g of x as limit. Lagyan natin ng limit yan. Lagyan natin ng limit. So, limit of g of x as x approaches A. So, another, yung last, yung limit of h of x as x approaches A. So, yan lang yung ibig sabihin ng 2 or more functions. Pwede pa tayong magdagdag dyan ng hanggang 4 or hanggang kung ilan ang given. So, yan. So, applied yan sa addition, subtraction, and multiplication. So, palitan na lang natin. Oh, pwede natin itong palitan ng minus, and minus. Next, pwede rin natin yung palitan ng multiplication. So, ano ba yung multiplication natin? Diba? Tuldok lang. Yan. Tuldok. So, tuldok. And period. So, ito, multiplication yan. Multiply. Yung green, subtraction. And yung black, of course, yung addition. So, yan lang yung ibig sabihin ni remark 1. Next, remark 2. The constant multiple theorem is a special case of the multiplication theorem. So, indeed, in the multiplication theorem, if the first function is replaced by a constant k, the result is the constant multiple theorem. So, ano naman ibig sabihin itong remark 2? O yan. Sabi niya, constant multiple theorem is a special case for multiplication theorem. So, ano yung constant multiple theorem natin? Yun yung Theorem 3. Ayan. So, paano tayo magbibigay ng example niyan? So, ito yung remark 1. Remark 1. Next, ito yung remark 2. So, yung constant multiple theorem natin, which is yung theorem 3. So, i-apply natin yung constant multiple theorem sa multiplication theorem. Okay, magbigay tayo ng halimbawa. So, for example, we have the limit of, example yan. Example, we have the limit of 3 f of x times, multiplication tayo, g of x. Ayan, as x approaches a. So, kung mapapansin nyo, ito yung, itong 3, yan ay, yan ay yung constant natin, k. So, bago muna yan, magbigay muna tayo ng value ng f of x and g of x. So, let's say if limit of f of x as x approaches a is equivalent to -5. And the limit of g of x as x approaches a is equivalent to -2. Ayan. So, substitute natin yan dito sa given example natin. Equals. Okay, so ilabas natin si 3. 3. Then, the limit of f of x as x approaches a multiplied to limit of g of x as x approaches a. So, lagyan natin to ng bracket para mas maintindihan natin. So, next frame na tayo. Equals 3. And then, ano yung value ng limit of f of x natin? -5. So, -5. And then, value ng limit of g of x natin is -2. So, -2. I-multiply natin. So, times. So, ano yung nasa loob? -5 times -2 is equivalent to +10. And then, i-multiply na natin siya sa constant. So, 3 times 10 is equivalent to 30. Ayan. Na-apply natin yung dalawang theorem. Yung constant multiple, tama? Constant multiple theorem and the multiplication theorem. Ayan. So, back to the module. So, we have here the theorem 6. Okay? Okay. So, yung theorem 6, discuss na lang natin sa next video. Okay? So, yung module naman natin na-upload ko i-upload ko later on sa platform natin and pwede niyang balikan. Pag meron kayong mga tanong, mag-message na lang kayo sa mga group chats natin. So, Theorem 6 onwards will be discussed to the next video. Thank you.